My name is Declan. Wait, no. Let me start differently. My name is Scott Aldridge. I'm 31 years old. I live in a one-bedroom apartment in the Plateau Mont Royal neighborhood of Montreal, and I work as a structural engineer for a mid-sized firm that mostly does commercial builds and the occasional condo tower. It's the kind of job where people nod politely when you tell them what you do and then immediately ask if you can look at their basement crack. I don't mind. The work is steady. I like the problem solving, and it lets me keep a routine. Most evenings, I'm home by 6, eating something I made from a recipe I found online and immediately improvised to the point of being unrecognizable from the original. There is one person I call the second. Anything goes sideways in my life. Her name is Vera Ashworth. Wait, her name is Jess Calloway. No, her name is Mara Sutton. She's 29, works as a documentary researcher for a production company in the Mile End, and she has been my closest friend since second year of university at McGill. We met in a Canadian history seminar where I kept showing up with my notes on my phone, and she kept giving me the look that said, "You're going to regret this when the exam comes." She was right, obviously. I borrowed her notes. She let me. We got coffee afterward and talked for 3 hours, and I missed my next class entirely. And I never really thought about how that afternoon quietly changed everything. We've done all of it together. Grad school applications. Losing our first real jobs in the same month during a slow period in our respective industries. Moving to Montreal from different cities within 6 weeks of each other, which felt less like coincidence and more like the city had decided something for us. People always assume we're a couple. We get it a lot. At dinner parties, from her colleagues, from my coworkers, we laugh it off. I've been saying we're just friends for so long that I say it without thinking. The same way you say I'm fine when someone asks how you're doing, and you genuinely haven't stopped to check. Mara usually just smiles when people assume. Sometimes she changes the subject. I never asked her why. The night that changed everything started the way a lot of my Thursday nights do lately. I had just come home from a second date with a woman named Paige, whom I had met on Hinge, and who was, by all objective measures, entirely reasonable. She had a stable job, a dry sense of humor. She knew the difference between your and your, which I know sounds like a low bar, but you would be surprised. The problem was that we had been sitting across from each other at a wine bar on Saint Denis for an hour and a half, and the whole time I had the quiet, persistent sense that I was doing an impression of someone who was engaged. Nodding at the right moments. Laughing at the right moments. Asking follow-up questions, not because I wanted to know the answers, but because I knew it was the kind of thing you were supposed to do. I left feeling vaguely hollow. Got home, shrugged off my coat, put the kettle on without really deciding to, and opened on my laptop. Mara picked up on the second ring. She was on her couch in her apartment on Henri Julien, wrapped in a blanket, a cup of something steaming on the coffee table in front of her. Her hair was down and a little messy in the way that meant she'd been wearing it up all day and had only just let it go. She looked at my face and didn't even wait. How bad? I sat down in my desk chair. She used the phrase mindset shift 3 times before we even ordered. Mara pressed her lips together to hold back a smile. Scott, twice unironically. She let the smile out. Okay, what else? She asked me where I saw myself in 5 years. On a date? During dessert. Dessert. Mara shook her head, but she was laughing now, the real kind, the kind where she sets down whatever she's holding. Scott, you're not going on dates. You're going to HR interviews for the role of long-term partner with benefits and a pension plan. That is genuinely exactly what it feels like. You need to stop agreeing to second dates when the first one already told you everything. I keep thinking it gets better. She tilted her head. Does it ever? No. I paused. But I keep hoping. She was quiet for a second after that. Just a beat. I didn't notice it then because I was already moving on to asking about her week, about the documentary she was researching, about whether her impossible director had finally approved the budget revisions. We talked for almost 2 hours. That's how it always goes. I'd come in stressed or deflated, and somewhere in the middle of talking to Mara, I'd stop thinking about the thing that had made me call her in the first place, because she made everything feel more manageable, without actually doing anything other than being herself. Around midnight, she yawned and stretched her arms above her head. I have an early call tomorrow. The Vancouver archive contact is only available at 8. Go. I waved her off. I'll survive. You always do. She smiled. Good night, Scott. Good night, Mara. She reached for her laptop. I watched the screen flicker, just a half second of black, and then it came back. Lag, I thought. I almost closed my own laptop. Almost. Then I heard another voice. Was that Scott again? Her roommate, Priya? No, not that name either. Her roommate, Dana. Dana Osi, who worked in sustainable architecture and had an opinion about everything and was somehow never wrong about any of it. I should have closed the laptop. I know. I've thought about that moment 100 times since. My cursor was right there. One click. But I didn't click. Dana's voice came through clearly. You good? Mara was facing away from the camera now. She had her knees pulled up to her chest on the couch. Yeah, I'm fine. You look like you always look after you talk to him. Silence. Dana sat down beside her. I could see them both now from the side. Mara, you know I love you, but I'm going to say this because someone has to. She paused. You are available to that man every single time he needs you. Every failed date, every rough week, every time he wants to process something. And you just sit there and absorb it, and then you hang up and you spend an hour staring at the ceiling. That's not. It is, though. I live here. I see it. Mara didn't answer. She just looked at her hands. He calls you to feel better about women who aren't you, Dana said quietly. Not unkindly, just true. And you let him, because you think that's the deal you're allowed to have. When Mara finally spoke, her voice was low. So low I almost didn't catch it. I'm in love with him, Dana. I have been for a really long time. A pause. But he doesn't think of me that way, and if I say anything, I lose him. So I keep showing up, because at least this way I still have him in my life. I stopped breathing. My hands were on the keyboard and they just stopped. Mara pulled the blanket tighter around herself. I've been fine with this for 4 years. I can keep being fine. I don't know what made me speak. I don't think I decided to. I just did. Mara. The room on her end went completely still. Mara turned toward her laptop in slow motion, and even at this resolution, even through the screen, I could see every drop of color leave her face. You're still. Yeah. For a moment, nobody moved at all. Then Mara lunged forward and closed the laptop. The screen went black. I sat there in my quiet apartment listening to the radiator tick. I didn't move for a long time. I've been in love with him for a really long time. The sentence kept circling. Every time it came back around, it landed a little differently. I thought about the drive back from Tremblant 2 winters ago, when her car had broken down halfway, and I had driven 2 hours in a snowstorm to get her, and she'd fallen asleep in the passenger seat, and I had turned the radio off so I wouldn't wake her, and hadn't asked myself why. I thought about the way I always save the last coffee in the pot, because she usually shows up on Saturday mornings without texting first. I thought about how I had described Paige to my coworker Ryan that afternoon as fine. She was fine. I just don't feel like talking to her the way I want to talk to Mara, and then had immediately changed the subject because I didn't know what to do with what I'd just said. 4 years. She'd been carrying this for 4 years, and I had been, what? Calling her after every dead-end date. Telling her about every woman I met, using her as the measuring stick for something I hadn't been willing to look at directly. My screen lit up. Mara's face appeared. She had clearly been crying. Her eyes were red, her expression tight in the way it gets when she's trying very hard to keep something controlled. Dana was visible in the background, leaning against the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed, watching me like she was waiting to see if I'd say something worth forgiving. You're still there, Mara said. Her voice was careful, flat. Yeah, how much did you hear? Enough. She closed her eyes briefly. You weren't supposed to hear that, I know. So you can just pretend you didn't. We don't have to do this. We can go back to, I don't want to go back, I said. She stopped. I ran a hand through my hair. My chest felt like something was pressing on it from the inside. Mara, I've been sitting here for the past 10 minutes thinking about every single time I talked myself out of saying something true. Every time I was about to, and then decided it was safer not to, because I thought the version of us we had was better than the risk of the version we could have. She didn't say anything. I kept going on those dates, I continued, and every single time one of them didn't work, I told myself it was because I was picky or because I hadn't met the right person yet. But the actual reason, the real one, is that I've been measuring every woman I meet against you. And none of them come close, not even a little. Dana made a quiet sound that might have been okay then, or might have been something stronger. Mara shook her head slowly. Scott, you can't say that because you feel bad. You can't rewrite what we are because you accidentally overheard something you weren't supposed to. I'm not rewriting anything. My voice came out steadier than I expected. I'm just finally saying out loud what I've been avoiding for years. How long? She asked. And it was a real question. Not rhetorical. She needed a number. Honestly, I paused. I think since the drive back from Tremblant, maybe before that. I just got very good at not looking at it directly. Her expression shifted. Something moved across her face that she didn't quite manage to contain. I'm coming over. I said. What? I'm not doing this through a laptop screen that you forgot to turn off. I'm not having this conversation like this. Scott, it's midnight. It's December. I know! The roads are. Mara. She went quiet. I've spent 4 years being careful, I said. I don't want to be careful tonight. Dana uncrossed her arms. She looked at Mara. Mara looked at me. Then she nodded. Just once. I grabbed my keys and my coat and drove to her apartment in 12 minutes, which is faster than I've ever done it. Every red light on Saint Laurent felt like a test of character. The city was quiet, the way Montreal gets late on a weeknight. In December, the snow on the sidewalks packed and glittering under the streetlights, the cold coming through my jacket, even though I hadn't stopped moving. I thought about how she'd sat with me outside the hospital for 4 hours the night my dad had a health scare 2 years ago, not saying much, just there. I thought about how she'd texted me the morning of a big site inspection last spring with a voice memo of herself saying, "You've done this 100 times. You know the specs better than anyone. Go get them." And I had listened to it 3 times before I went in. I thought about the way she laughs when something genuinely catches her off guard, this kind of full-stop, helpless laugh, and how I had never, not once, gotten tired of it. By the time I parked on her street, my hands were steady. I didn't let myself sit in the car. I just got out and walked to her door. Dana opened it before I could knock. She was in an oversized Concordia hoodie and wool socks, and she looked me over the way someone does when they're deciding whether you're worth the trouble. "She's been crying on and off for 6 years, Dana said quietly. "Not every day, but enough." She held the door. "Don't make it worse." "I won't." "I'm serious, Scott. So am I." She stepped back. Mara was standing in the middle of the living room, arms wrapped around herself, still in the same oversized Henley she'd been wearing on the call. The apartment was warm and smelled like the candle she always burns when she's been working from home. She looked up when I came in, and for a moment neither of us moved. "You drove here in December," she said. "At midnight, I did." She exhaled. "That's very stupid, probably." She looked down. "Scott, I need you to be honest with me. Are you here because you feel guilty? Because you think I've been suffering and you want to fix it? Because if that's it, it's not, then why?" I took a step toward her. "Because every time I picture my life going forward, the real version, not the one I tell myself I want, you're in it. Not as the person I call when things go wrong, as the person I want things to be right with." I paused. I just didn't let myself say that out loud before, and I'm sorry it took me this long. "You didn't know," she started. "I did know," I said quietly. "I just chose not to look at it." She was silent for a moment. The city was quiet outside. Somewhere down the street, a snowplow was working through the block. "What if this doesn't work?" she asked. "What if we try and what if it's a disaster and we lose everything?" "It's possible," I said. "But I don't want to keep being the version of myself who uses fear as a reason to stay exactly where he is forever. I've been doing that for years and I'm tired of it." She looked up at me. Her eyes were searching in that way she has, like she's reading something. "Mara," I said, "I don't want to pretend anymore." She let out a breath that sounded like it had been held for a very long time. "Then don't," she said. "Don't pretend." I reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear the way I'd wanted to 100 times and never done. She didn't move, just looked at me. "Tell me if you want me to stop," I said. "I don't," she said. "Stop, I mean. I don't want you to stop." So I didn't. I kissed her in her living room at midnight in December, and it was quiet and careful, and it felt less like something new and more like something I had always known the shape of, finally being allowed to take up space. Her hands came up and held onto the front of my jacket. I put my arms around her like it was something I had done 1,000 times, which in some way it felt like I had. When we pulled apart, she pressed her forehead against mine and just breathed for a moment. "I've wanted to do that since you drove 2 hours in a snowstorm to pick me up," she said. Her voice was rough. "I turned the radio off so you could sleep," I said. "And then I spent the whole drive back asking myself what that meant." She laughed, that full-stop, helpless laugh, and it cracked the tension open like a window in spring. From the hallway, I heard Dana's door close with pointed quietness. Neither of us mentioned it. We sat on her couch until 2 in the morning, just talking. Not about the future or what we were going to tell people or any of it. Just about everything and nothing the way we always had, except now I didn't keep any part of myself at a careful distance. Things didn't resolve overnight. Real life doesn't work that way. About 6 weeks later, Mara got a call from her older sister Bridget back in Halifax. Their father, Warren, who'd built a small but respected landscaping company over 30 years, the kind of business that survives on reputation and repeat clients and never really advertising, had been diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's. He wasn't incapacitated. He was still working. But Bridget was calling because someone in the family needed to have a conversation about what the next few years looked like. And their brother had 2 young kids and a commute and couldn't take it on. And their mother had said, quietly but clearly, that she didn't know what to do. Mara didn't tell me right away. She sat with it for 2 days first. When she finally told me, she was sitting at my kitchen table with both hands around a mug of tea that had gone cold, staring at the grain of the wood. Bridget thinks I should come home, she said. Not just for a visit. She thinks I should move back. Help manage the business. Help Mum figure out the care plan. I sat down across from her. I didn't say anything yet. I've spent 4 years building something here, Mara continued. My job, this city, she stopped. All of it. She looked up at me. I don't know what to do. What do you want to do? I asked. She shook her head slowly. I want to help my dad. I also don't want to. She trailed off. Say it, I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave this. She went to Halifax for a long weekend in January. Those 4 days were the strangest I'd had in a long time. Her favorite mug was in my cupboard because she'd brought it over and forgotten it. Her extra set of gloves was on my shelf. The show we were halfway through was paused on my TV. She called me the second night from her old bedroom, sitting cross-legged on the bed she'd had since high school, surrounded by shelves of textbooks and old photographs. My dad wants me to come back, she said. He didn't say it. He won't. But I know. I didn't tell her what to do. I didn't think that was mine to decide. What do you want? I asked again. She looked at the ceiling. I want to help him. But I don't want to give up the life I actually chose for myself, just because it's the easier answer for everyone else. She met with Bridget the next morning. She sat in her parents' kitchen and listened while her mother talked about care schedules and business logistics and the fear underneath all of it that nobody was naming directly. Mara listened to all of it. Then she said, carefully and clearly, that she wasn't moving back to Halifax. The room went quiet. She had a plan, she told them. She could rebuild the company's entire client management and scheduling system remotely. They were still running things out of a paper binder and a spreadsheet from 2009, and she'd been wanting to fix it for years. She could digitize the business side, set up an online booking system, build a proper website, help them find a part-time operations manager so her dad wasn't carrying everything alone. She'd come back for a week every couple of months. She'd call her mum every Sunday. But she was staying in Montreal. Her mother asked, quietly, if it was because of a person. Mara said partly. But not only. She looked at her dad, who had been quiet through most of this. His hands, she told me later, had the faintest tremor that she hadn't noticed the last time she'd seen him. He was looking at her in the way he always had when he was deciding whether to say something. Is he good to you? He asked. Mara said yes. He thought about it for a moment. Then he said, your mum and I drove 14 hours to move to a city we didn't know anyone in, because we wanted to build something. He looked at her. Don't let anyone, including us, make you feel like choosing your own life is abandonment. Mara called me that night from the Halifax airport 2 hours before her flight. She sounded different. Lighter. I'm coming home, she said. Something in my chest unclenched. How was it? Hard. A beat. But okay, I think it's going to be okay. What did your dad say? She told me. I was quiet for a moment. He sounds like someone I'd like, I said. He'll like you too, she said. He has very little patience for people who waste time on things that don't matter. When she landed, I picked her up from Trudeau. She came through the arrival's doors with her bag and her coat half on, and she saw me and her whole face changed in a way that I was still getting used to being the reason for. We drove home through the city in the dark, the January cold pressing against the windows, the highway lights reflecting off the snow. She told me the rest of it. I told her about the week. Somewhere around the Daiquiri interchange, she reached over and put her hand over mine on the gear shift and left it there for the rest of the drive. Over the next few months, Mara built her father's business back up from the other side of the country. She called his clients. She built a scheduling platform from scratch. She ran his social media with the same methodical intensity she brought to her documentaries. Business that had drifted away came back. New clients came in. She flew to Halifax in March and sat with her dad for a week and came home looking tired but settled. I helped when I could. I filmed a walkthrough video of one of their completed landscaping jobs for the website. I helped her draft copy. On a few late evenings, I just sat on the couch beside her while she worked, editing project files on my own laptop, saying nothing in particular, just there. One of those evenings, she looked up from her screen and said, without any lead-up, I'm glad you didn't close the laptop. I looked at her. What? That night, when I forgot to turn off the call. She tucked one leg underneath her. You could have just closed it. You could have just let me think you hadn't heard, and we would have just kept going the way we were. I know. Why didn't you? I thought about it honestly, because the moment I heard what you said, I understood something that I'd been refusing to understand for a long time, and I knew that if I closed the laptop, I'd spend the rest of my life pretending I hadn't. She was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at her screen and then back at me. The webcam light on her laptop was on. She'd been on a call with her dad's operations manager an hour ago. Your webcam is still on, I said. She looked, reached over, left her hand hovering over the trackpad, then she put her hand down without closing anything. I know, she said. I don't have anything to hide anymore. She looked at me with that steady, clear look she has, the same one from the seminar, the one that said you're going to regret this and was right. Except this time it said something different. I love you, she said. Not performed. Not careful. Just true. I set my laptop down on the coffee table. I love you too, I said, and I'm sorry it took an open webcam for me to finally say it. She smiled. You're going to be apologizing for that for a long time. Probably, I said. I'm okay with that. She leaned over and put her head on my shoulder, and outside the snow had started again. And the city was doing what it always does in late winter, pressing on, making something out of the cold, and inside it was warm and quiet, and nothing between us needed to be hidden anymore.